Well, it's a beautiful day today, and I was so glad to ride out this morning on my lowrider. So this is, I guess, my first trip to work now that I have the lumbar seat attached. I just wanted to talk about motorcycle fitment for a few minutes. It's something I never thought about when I got my first bike. You buy a car, unless you're an NBA player or something, you get in it, you adjust the seat, the mirrors. Most cars these days have an adjustable steering wheel, and you ride off. Not so with a motorcycle, right? Occasionally you might get one that has some options, like maybe moving the handlebars a little bit. But Harley makes a lot of money selling parts, aftermarket parts, I guess that's the term, or accessories, so that people can fit a bike better. For my lowrider, they make a reduced reach seat. They make a further reduced reach seat. They make the forward controls. They make some other version of the controls, that forward mids or something crazy like that. The point is, there's a lot of different options, because it's not a one-size-fits-all thing. And it was a little scary for me. Scary in the sense that I thought I might have made a mistake buying this bike. So I'll just run through it real quick. First of all, when I bought my first bike, the Sportster, it fit me like a glove. I did have some issues with the seat and rear shocks because they were both horrible, but as far as geometry goes, I fit on the bike without any issues. I test rode a lowrider a couple years ago. The lowriders have a lumbar pad on the seat which can be removed. It pushes you forward about 1.5 inches. And the lowriders by default come with what they call mid controls, or I just call them the standard controls, where your legs are pretty much at a 90-degree angle. And when I test rode it, I was kind of scrunched up, and it probably would have been better, well, it definitely would have been better if I had removed the lumbar pad, but the dealer didn't offer that. I didn't ask for it, so I just kind of rode scrunched up on a bike. And I just assumed that taking that pad off, I'd be more comfortable. And there was always the option of forward controls, which I had on my previous bike, which kind of lets my legs go out a little further. So this time around, I test rode another lowrider, and again, it had the mid controls and the lumbar pad, and I was all squished up. So finally, this bike comes along. It's the exact opposite. No lumbar pad, and it has these forward controls, which push the foot pegs out a considerable distance compared to stock. I could tell as soon as I rode out for the test ride that my feet were pretty far out in front of me, probably too far. And I thought, well, you know, I can just throw that seat pad on. You see the common thread here? A lot of assumptions on my part. I assume this, I think that, without actually doing it. So I end up buying the bike. And then the realization hits me that, man, these controls are so far out in front. So I ordered the seat pad, which took 3 days to get here. So during those 3 days, I'm just all stressed out. And when I put the pad on, I wasn't really able to get a ride in because it was about to pour. I literally rode like 3 miles real quick. I finally take it for a test ride, and it was better, but I was still having problems just fitting on this bike. And what I came to realize was, just because it was a different position, maybe a little wider, it was just going to take a little time for the muscles in my legs and everything just to acclimate, to kind of break in. And finally that happened. They did. And I went out Saturday and I felt completely comfortable, and this morning, 60-mile ride in, felt great, just like I did on my old bike. So kind of the moral of this little story is I really dodged an arrow. Because when I was starting to stress about, these forward controls, they might be just way too forward, I was like, well, maybe I can just switch them back. The forward control kit is about $450. And when you look at the directions, it literally is like remove, standard, blah, 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 and discard. The Harley directions actually instruct you to throw away the parts as you remove them. And that just cracks me up. I mean, I keep every single part. I have a little baggie full of old parts for who knows when. And if I was going to do a mod on my bike like forward controls, you're darn tootin', I would keep every single part I took off just in case I needed to undo it. So Harley doesn't make a kit to undo the forward controls. So you literally have to go through the instructions and the parts book, and you have to figure out all the pieces that you need to put the thing back to stock. So that is a major hassle. And, if I was going to do that, I, of course, would miss something, have the whole bike torn apart, and it would be like a special order that would take a week to come in. But even if you had all the parts, here's what really got me. When I took a look around to see if anybody else had undone forward controls, and several people had. One guy said 7 hours of labor. I like almost coughed up a fur ball. 7 hours of labor. So at that point I realized if I can't fit on this bike with these forward controls, and I'm probably gonna end up selling it. I ain't doing 7 hours tearing the transmission apart, doing a big search project on all the parts I need. I mean, it would just be insane. And that's when I was really, really kicking myself. Pretty concerned that I may have overlooked something really important. I suppose one other option would have been looking at some different seats to push me up even further. I'll say this, with the lumbar pad in, I'm kind of sitting in a little bucket seat, and it's pretty tight. There's not a ton of space to move around. You're pretty much in one spot. But I'm getting used to that, and it feels okay. So the point of this is you really need to be sure when you buy a bike that either it's going to fit right or you're going to be able to make it fit without too much hassle and expense. Because if not, it just might ruin the whole experience for you and you end up getting rid of the bike. So I'm super glad that I didn't get burned on this, but I very well could have. I really could have. It turns out there's an extended reach forward controls as well. And someone online had said to me, make sure you don't have that, because that's a whole nother animal. And fortunately, I don't have that. But you can imagine the horror that would be, Some people recommend renting a bike before actually buying it. Renting the model, maybe a used model of the one you want to get for a day. And, do a couple 100 miles and put it through its paces. That is obviously way better than a 15-minute test ride, because you don't learn a whole lot on a 15-minute test ride. But I will say even renting it for a day, you might not totally become aware of all the things that are potential concerns. I mean, hopefully you do. But it took me a few 100 miles to get comfortable and realize, okay, this bike's going to work out. So I'm throwing this out there as a heads up, and you know, for a beginning rider obviously, but even for somebody that already rides. I mean, I had a few years of experience, but this was kind of a new thing for me. I didn't have it the last time. So just be aware and make sure you don't end up making an expensive mistake that causes you to end up selling a bike that doesn't fit you. Well, I wasn't moving very much on this moto vlog because I missed a turn and had to go through some traffic, but hopefully the content was educational. That will do it for me. I'm heading in to grab a tool at a local store and then heading on home. Have a good one, guys. Till next time.